Welcome back to video 1.5, Configuring and Extending Yi2 Components. Last time we explored the file structure of the basic application template and learned how to use namespaces to help Yi's autoloader find our class dependencies. Now, we will take a look at how we can configure our newly created application. First, we will look at how we can change some basic settings, including the application parameters and database connection settings. Next, we will learn how to configure a core component of the Yi framework to change how our application handles URLs. Finally, we will extend a core component to add desired functionality to our application. The first step is to open up our config directory. Let's open up web.php, which is our main application configuration file. Ignoring the first line for a moment, you'll see that this file defines an associative array called config and returns it at the end of the script. If you remember our index.php entry script, it included this file and then fed its output to the application object as a constructor parameter. Essentially, the keys in these array values map to public attributes of the component classes that Yi uses during the application lifecycle. For instance, if you look at the mailer section of the array, you'll see that the value of useFileTransport is set to true. If we open the base mailer class, which the mailer class inherits from, we'll see that useFileTransport is a public attribute of that class. If we head on back to web.php, we'll see that before the config array is defined, Yi sets another variable called params. The values for this file are set in params.php, which is located in the same directory as our current file. Let's go ahead and open that up right now. You will see that this file simply returns another associative array. You can use this array in order to set application-wide variables. Now that we understand parameters, let's configure our database. The database components are also added to the config variable by including the external file. Open that file. Go ahead and update this file to match the values that were created when we set up our server with Puffit. Next, we're going to change the default behavior on Yi's URL Manager component, which among other things determines how Yi interprets incoming URL requests. Open our application and click on the About menu. You'll see that our URL looks rather unfriendly and unmemorable. Head back to web.php and add a URL Manager section. Next, set Enable Pretty URL to True. Switch back to the browser, reload the page, and then click the link again. That's certainly looking better, but wouldn't it be great if we could get rid of this index.php? And if you ever saw a merman try to type, you would know why. This is a two-step process. First, we'll go ahead and add another setting to the URL Manager section of web.php called showScriptName, and we'll set it to false. The second part is to add an htaccess file, which will tell Apache to route all requests for non-existent files and directories to index.php. Create an htaccess file in your web directory containing the following code. Now, switch back to the browser one last time, reload the page, and click the About link again. Great! Isn't that much easier to read? Okay, so we've learned how to configure an existing application component. But what if we want to extend the functionality of one of these components? We'll talk more about Yi's View component later, but for now just know that it is responsible for the display layer of our application. It has a render method, which it uses to generate content. Well, let's say we wanted to filter out the word garlic throughout our application, because some of our users have reported an extreme sensitivity to it. Let's edit the content of our About page, which is stored in Views, Site, About.php, and add some objectionable content. If we load our About page, we'll see that it shows up right where we expect it to. A good habit to get into is storing your custom components in a components directory. which doesn't currently exist. So let's go ahead and create one in the application root. Now, create a file called view.php and add the following code. We make our namespace declaration and extend our new class from the current view component. And then we override the existing render method, but we filter the word garlic before returning its value. This would be a good time to point out that this is a rather crude way of filtering our content. Yi provides formatter helper objects to accomplish this task in a more modular fashion, but we're just trying to grasp the concept of overriding core application components, so this will do for now. So our updated render function is all set, but we have to tell Yi to use our custom view component rather than its built-in version. In order to accomplish that, we head back to web.php and create a view section. Add a setting to this called class and set it to app components view. Now, when we take a look at our About page, we can see that our unwanted content has been replaced by its censored version. This should be great news to both you and the lonely vampires who will be using our site. That's all. That brings us to the end of the first section. We now understand how to configure Yi and its components, as well as extending them to add to or modify their default behavior. In this section, we also set up and connected to a virtual development server. We then configured that server and installed the Yi basic application template. Next, we took a closer look at the files and directories that make up the basic application template and learned how to use namespaces in Yi so that the autoloader can quickly find dependencies. In the next section, we will take a look at some of the tools that Yi 2 provides to greatly increase productivity during application development.